That announcement from Vanguard today has literally changed the whole FTSE All World ETF battle. For years, investors choosing between Vanguard and Invesco had one big question. Was the lower fee from Invesco worth choosing over Vanguard? But Vanguard have now announced that fee reduction going from 0.19% to 0.14%, taking effect from the 28th of July. So the question is, does that change the decision? Is Vanguard the obvious choice, or are there still reasons for investors to choose Invesco? Well, in this video, we're going to break it down and get into it. So you're looking to invest into a global all-world ETF. These have been the two most popular, the Vanguard FTSE All World versus the Invesco FTSE All World. So at a glance, they look almost identical. They both track the FTSE All World Index, they both invest globally, and they both give you exposure to thousands of companies around the world. So whether you choose Vanguard or Invesco, you're investing into companies like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Toyota, and thousands more. So instead of trying to pick the winners yourself, you're buying a slice of the global economy. And this is where the Global Index Fund is so popular amongst investors. But do they actually invest in the same thing? Well, the answer is yes, they do. Both ETFs will track the same FTSE All World Index, giving you exposure to developed and emerging markets across around 50 countries. So the biggest question is, am I getting global diversification? The answer is yes with both. So at this point, I call that a draw. But here's where things get interesting. The number of companies that each of them own are different. Vanguard will own 3,800 companies roughly, whereas Invesco owns roughly around 2,700 companies. So does that automatically mean that Vanguard is better because it owns more companies? Well, not necessarily. Vanguard uses what's called a replication, which means they try and buy almost every company within the index. Whereas Invesco's approach is slightly different. They use something called sampling. So instead of buying every company, it buys a carefully selected group designed to behave almost exactly the same as the full index. So think about it like a survey. If you want to understand what an entire country thought about something, you wouldn't need to ask every single person. You'd ask a representative, so a sample. If that sample is chosen correctly, you can get a very good, accurate picture. That's what Invesco does. It doesn't need to own every company closely tracked to the performance of the index. So what about performance? Well, both funds will track the same index, meaning their performance is very similar. But the difference isn't that one fund invests completely differently to the other. It just means that they're both giving you the same exposure to the global market and investing in the same big hitters within that global market. Which brings us on to the biggest change. What are the fees? So the cost difference, this is where Vanguard have completely changed the conversation. Previously offering a rate of 0.19% and Invesco sit at 0.15%. But now they've announced they're reducing that fee to 0.14% from the 28th of July. So that now means that Vanguard is actually cheaper out of the two funds. But does that really make a difference? Well, let's have a look. So let's say you've invested and built a portfolio up to the value of 750,000. With the new rate from Vanguard at 0.14%, you'd be paying an annual fee of around £1,050 a year. With Invesco at the 0.15%, you'd be paying £1,125 a year. So the difference is £75 a year. Now, if you built up a portfolio of 750,000, £75 probably isn't going to change your retirement plans, but it is still money, and that stays invested and continues working for you. So which one should you choose? The interesting thing is actually there's not a bad choice. Vanguard might have slightly moved ahead in terms of an advantage because of the announcement today. They've got a longer track record, they've got a huge fund size, they own more of the underlying companies, and now they've got a slightly lower fee. But Invesco still offers the same FTSE All World ETF exposure, they're globally diversified, and they're very competitive on costs. So personally, I think investors sometimes spend too much time trying to find the perfect ETF. Because the biggest difference over the next 20 or 30 years probably won't come from choosing Vanguard over Invesco. It will come from starting early, investing consistently, and staying invested through markets' ups and downs. The biggest mistake isn't choosing Vanguard. The biggest mistake isn't choosing Invesco. But the biggest mistake is spending years trying to decide while your money sits in cash. I'd love to know, has Vanguard fees reduction changed your view? Are you sticking with Invesco? Let me know in the comments.